Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Mid Ulster District Council, I'd like to welcome you to the Build Your Business Battleplan webinar, one of 13 events providing support to local businesses for Enterprise Week. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. The session is being recorded so that we can upload this to the Council's website afterwards for those of you that can't attend today or if you wish to rewatch the webinar. However, your microphones and cameras are turned off by default, so you will not be seen or heard anytime during this session. We also want this session to be as interactive and engaging as possible. So as we go through the webinar, please feel free to enter any questions you may have for Paul using the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar. And I will ask those in a Q&A a little bit later. So this webinar is the final event of 2022 successful Mid Ulster Enterprise Week, and we are absolutely ending on a high. As one of Mid Ulster's best known leading entrepreneurs, Paul hardly needs an introduction for many of you. Paul is Chief Executive and owner of the hugely successful Cookstown-based AES Global Limited, a multi-award-winning company which specializes in manufacturing one of the world's widest range of wireless intercoms and access control products for doors and gates. AES's growth has been incredible, amounting to a staggering 300% in the last 6 years, with 90% of this attributed to exports. In 2022, they won the Excellence in Exporting Award at the Belfast Telegraph Business Awards, and in 2021, the Queen's Award for International Trade. However, AES has had to face the same challenges as many other businesses, including Brexit, the pandemic, supply chain issues, and currently the economic crisis. Over the next 45 minutes, Paul will draw on his own experiences in navigating these choppy waters to bring you his 5-point battle plan, offering his unique insights into steps you can take to maximize your business resilience and growth potential. Over to you, Paul.
Sarah, thanks for that kind introduction. So I'm just going to share screen here now and get started. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen now. So look, thanks for that. I guess just to give you a little bit of a background of where we started from, really we were an installation company, like a man in a van type of arrangement, doing security, home installs, home security business, stuff like that. And back in sort of 2007 to 2009, I noticed a few gaps in the market where solutions were needed that weren't freely available. So I set about designing and manufacturing a range of solutions that then sort of gave birth to the company as it is today. And to give you a little bit of a flavor of what that looks like, if I can get these slides to move on, that would be good. We're a little bit stuck. I'll keep talking, it'll move itself. So we've got a trading company based in Florida, because we do a lot of exports into the US market. A main trading UK company in the UK here. And then we have a global telecoms business that's located in the Irish market that collects recurring revenue from a lot of our customers all over the world, where they sign up to telecom services and so on. Okay, let me see if the screen sharing is working now. Oh, there we go. Something's happening. So you can see a range of products here, like wireless solutions and phone call on your phone from a gate intercom. Gives you a flavor of kind of what we have here. So I don't know. Yeah, there we go.
Well, just to let you know, I'm sharing your slides for you. So you just let me know when you want to move on.
Yeah, okay. If you move it on for me, that'd be great. Okay, so what we want to do is cover what I call a 5-point battle plan. So number one here, if you just want to roll with me here, is strategy. We want to look at what does your strategy need to be in your business going forward, and why that's important to look at right now. Next one is bringing in your team as early into that strategy conversation as possible, and why you need to do that. Number 3 is in motivating of your teams and making sure that everybody's as fully incentivized and encouraged at this time as possible. Number 4, company culture, going to be under pressure at the moment. And number 5, measuring success. So next slide, please. So I saw this image and I thought this represents where we're all at right now, not even as just business owners and managers and businesses, but society as a general. So the road ahead's a bit uncertain, isn't it? You know, you look at that picture and you can see there's a few humps ahead, but there might be a turn or a corner. It's heading into mountains. Anything's kind of possible. So if we look at all the different things that we've been facing over the last while and yet to come with uncertainty, we've got Brexit there as a first one. So I think energy costs rising and maybe continuing to rise. Who knows where that's going to go? War. And what's the outcome of that? Where does that end? Currency fluctuations. So any of you who are buying in, maybe not even directly from overseas or selling overseas, but you're indirectly buying from like an importer who's got currency exposure, for example, might affect what you're paying for your supplies and your raw materials. Market turbulence, when we had sort of the Liz Truss effect and all that kind of thing that hit the currency as well. Labor costs increasing, material costs increasing, impending recession, and cost of borrowing. So, you know, all of that is cost of borrowing. If you're a business and you need to fund certain things, that's going to become more expensive as interest rates go up. So there's a lot of stuff there, guys. So if anyone out there is feeling a little bit anxious or stressed, there's pretty good reason for it. Or what, about 9 or so there? So if you can knock us on there to the next slide, please. So I wanted to actually raise a point here that I think has been missed in the general mainstream media. This recession, I feel, is a little bit different than a lot. So in a normal recession, if you look at this chart here, that green X represents your normal monthly income or your normal trading. And across the bottom, you can see 1 right through to 18 months. So, Sarah, if you want to hit the space bar a few times there, you'll see what happens in a recession is you get some sort of a downturn in your income. And depending on how far that goes, you know, it'll depend on the business and the recession, how long it lasts as well. So you get that kind of a dip there. It mightn't be as severe as that for some businesses, and for others it might be more. And that's what you normally get. This recession is a little bit different, so we'll move it on to the next part and see why. So your costs are represented by red X's here, and if we can roll through this is what's happening at the minute. Your costs are actually going up at the same time as maybe facing the potential of less income coming in. So if we look at the next, so that's your profit there, right, on the left. The difference between your income and your costs, but over on the right hand side, we'll see that that's a loss. So if we're not careful, that's where we'll end up. So the next slide represents what we need to not do, which is just pretend like it's not there. So I always say, you know, I guess plan for the worst, but expect the best. So have optimism, but make sure that, you know, if things don't work out, you have a plan. So let's see what's next for us here on the next slide. I like this. So this is like, if you imagine you're a soccer team, your business and you know, the people that work for you are a football team. And all of a sudden now you've been told, well, you're not going to be playing soccer anymore. We're going to play rugby. We don't really know the game. We don't know the rules. And you're definitely going to come out of that game with a few more scrapes and scratches and scuffs than you might out of a soccer game. But to a certain extent, it doesn't matter as much as you think, because your competitors have also been told you're not playing soccer anymore either. You're now also playing rugby. So the rules of the game is changing for you and your competitors. So the only thing that really matters is how much you can adapt to the new rules faster than them. So if you can be more adaptable, your team can adjust, your business can re-strategize quicker than your rivals, then you win the match and you win the league and so on. So try and think about that. It's a different field for all of us, and that's just that. So let's move it on. And sorry, guys, just wanted to reiterate what was said at the start there. I'm really interested if any of you got questions or comments, if you can put them up here as messages, and I'll try and address some of those at the end, and then we'll maybe get my email address out there, and I'll be happy to address a few things one-on-one afterwards if you wanted to keep it confidential. But feel free to be brave and say what's on your mind. If you're concerned or you have a question on something, I'll try and address it. So step one, find your strategy. And let's look at what we cannot control. The depth nor length of the recession, your income and energy prices, what your customers are going to have spare to spend. If you're a restaurant and you're worried about, people, household budgets are going to be squeezed, there's not much you can do about that. Brexit, so on, war, taxation. But let's look on the right-hand side about what we can do. So notice the change in the language here, what we cannot control versus what we can do. So it's action now. So let's rattle down through these. We can make a plan, we can look at efficiencies, remove waste out of the business, we can automate certain processes, adjust our sales, prepare for the worst, be ready, re-energize your team, dig in for hard work, reorganize, make non-essential cuts, invest. Now, I'm going to pause here because everyone automatically might think that, well, come recession, we need to cut, and we need to lay people off, and we need to stop spending. There's an alternative think tank around that where, in previous recessions, they've looked at businesses who came out of recession with an increase in market share, and a lot of them actually invested and they went all in. Now, that's okay if you've got those cash reserves in your bank account and you can spend a little bit. And, we did that in the COVID side of things. We went heavy on investment. We did more R&D than we ever did before. So that what we were trying to do was almost trade our way out of it. So say we had 7 products and they were all going to drop by 20%. So we had an overall drop. If we could add in 2 more product lines and make 9 products, then the extra 2 might counter the drop in the other 7. So there is a potential thought pattern around that. Invest in the business, and go all in for market share. So maybe up the marketing spend, get more aggressive with social media, negotiate with suppliers. You've been maybe buying something and you've developed a trust relationship over a long period of time. This might be the time to ask for more favorable credit terms or some sort of change around in the service offering from your suppliers. And then a big one for me is discuss with your bank. So bank managers and banks do not like surprises. They don't like negative surprises. They actually don't have much of an issue if you tell them that, well, look, we think we're going to run into a problem Q1 next year. We think we're going to have a cash flow issue, or we think that we're going to have an X, Y, and Z problem. If you can predict that some way in advance and go and talk to them about it, they actually, I would say, they admire it, they respect it, and they like that sort of approach. So feel free to have a sit down with your bank manager and discuss where you think your business is going, discuss what you think your concerns are and what you think you might need. And you don't need to necessarily go into like deep delve in business plans at this stage, but it's interesting just to keep them in the picture. I try and think of our bank as a business partner, and they have a right to know what's going on in the business because it's no different than an employee or a shareholder in the business. So next slide then. I like this one because, if you look at the 3 little white airplanes on the left, they're all heading in the same direction. So let's say that's your competitors in your market and they're all sort of taking the same approach as to where they're headed. Do you need to do the same thing, or might you be the little orange one there where you've set a new direction for your business, and maybe you adjust your sales, not your destination. So maybe you head off on a slightly different tangent. And what might that look like? Sorry to pick on the restaurateurs, but let's say, for example, you're thinking that household incomes are going to be squeezed, perhaps, so there's less money for eating out. Is it the right strategy to try and drop your prices and be the cheapest place in town to eat? When you look at your bottom line profit at the end of that, or would it actually work to put your prices up and move into more of a fine dining arena and more of an exclusive thing? And yes, have your restaurant half the table usage that it used to have, but with much, much greater margins, perhaps, and less work, less staff to pay, less energy usage, and so on. So it's not always, following the pack isn't always a good thing. And if any of you have done any business courses, you'll maybe have heard the term blue ocean thinking. It's trying to think, where is no one else? Where is there an empty space? Like, in other words, blue ocean that's not polluted. Where can I go where I'm not being followed? And there's a bit of vacancy there. So let's move it on. Involving the team early in your strategy. Why involve your team at all? I work with business clients, and the executives in the company will come up with a business strategy, and that's it. And maybe 2 or 3 people work on it, and then off they go. But they don't even think to never mind involve their teams, but actually even share it with them afterwards. They just, people find out when it's happening, what's going on. So if we move on to the next slide, what I'm suggesting is this: you do what this lady's doing. You present what you're thinking to your team, where you think the business needs to go, and what you think the challenges will be, so that you can get what's on the next slide. To get this proper buy-in from your team, you're going to need it. You're going to need it now more than ever. You're going to need all hands to the pump, backs against the wall, trench mentality, where it's us against the enemy, and we're all in this together. And that's why you bring them in early. Now, let's look at a few more reasons on the next slide as to the benefits. So if you do it and bring them in early, it might be a better plan. So I can't say that my plan is perfect. No plan is. And the more people I talk to about my strategic thinking for the business, the more input to that, the more angles and perspectives that are put before me that I maybe didn't see before. So it's a better plan. And then whenever people have been asked their opinion, and remember, asking someone's opinion isn't the same thing necessarily as just doing what they say. You can ask someone's opinion and then do what you were going to do anyway, perhaps, but at least when they feel like they had some input to it, there's more buy-in. And we want open and honest communication from top down. In other words, if you're open and honest with your team, then they might be open and honest with you back. And that's important. So step 3, motivating your team and why that's important. So let's roll this on to the next slide and look at some of the things that we're going to get here and what we need to do for them. So if you guys are a bit uncertain or unsure, imagine how your employees feel and your team members. Reassurance is an important thing at the minute. Letting them know that you're aware of what's coming, that your eye is on the ball, that you're looking at a strategy, that you're making a plan, and that you're working hard to make sure that the business is safe and their jobs are safe as well. And a bit of loyalty goes both ways there. We talk about the great resignation and the cost of people leaving and replacing and so on. And it's not what you need right now is a high turnover of staff headcount. And that openness piece is a critical thing going forward. Here's a big one here for me. Find out what they want. An aspirational conversation. So the likes of Gary V, if you know who that is, advocates this. It's sitting down with 22-year-old Jane and saying to her, Jane, what do you want? Not from the business, but what do you want from life? And 22-year-old Jane might want, to go to one of your remote offices, because travel's on her agenda anyway at some point, and maybe work in one of your other places, or she might want to pay off her student loan. So more hours, more bonuses, more incentives financially. But maybe 27-year-old Jane wants to spend more time with her other half, new partner, and might want to be scaling that back. And 35-year-old Jane might want to work 9 to 2 because there's kids involved in childcare arrangements. So I find it useful to at least once a year have a coffee or a lunch with every person in your direct report at least, and find out what they want. What do they want out of life right now? And then here's the beauty of it. You tell them what you want. Well, here's what I want from you. So they say what they want, you say what you want. You put those together almost in like I hate to call it a performance review. I call it, a life goal conversation, not a performance review. And basically you try and create a contract between you. And it's like a 1-page, here's what you want, here's what I want. And what you say to that person is, well, if you can give me this, this, and this, I'll give you that, that, and that. And it's like a few bullet points, you sign it off and off you go. And that's great because that person then knows what's expected of them. And it avoids those awkward conversations where they come knocking on your office door and say, I need a raise. Well, we had this conversation, you need to do this, this, and this, and then I will pay you that, that, and that. So And that mightn't be, if we roll on the next few points here, this might be the time, believe it or not, everyone's thinking about cuts, but it might actually be the time to turn up the volume on the financial incentives, on the perks and rewards, bonus time off, and things like that. This might not be the time to be pulling that stuff back. You're only human, and there's a lot coming at you, but your team are only human as well. They've got, increasing, costs at home, energy costs and so on, fuel bill, food bill going up, and they're scared and they're maybe stressed and stuff. So maybe this is the time to actually go the other way to get more from them. If you think about, I've got 10 employees, say, for example, how can I get 10% more from each person? Well, just not by asking. I just don't think that people work that way anymore. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things that we have done to get more from our people. So commission on sales. So we have remote salespeople in different countries, and we pay them a percentage of what they sell in a month. But not just as simple as that, because salespeople tend to drop the price just to get the deal done and get their commission. So we actually pay them a larger percentage of commission if they go into a higher price bracket. So let's say we tell them, if you give a customer 20% off list, we'll pay you 1% commission on all your sales for the month. But if you only give them 10% off, we'll pay 2% on that sale. So it's a huge incentive for them to try and get the best price, right? So it's about trying to find smart ways in your business that your team are encouraged to upsell. Like in a restaurant, again, sorry, restaurant guys, but waiting staff should be really trying to say, oh, you wouldn't take a wee look at the dessert menu. There's a new one on you maybe haven't seen before. It's my favorite, and then give them a tip for you actually getting a dessert sale or something to that effect. That's just off the top of my head. Profit share. So I do that with senior leadership team here, where they get a share of annual profits, and that changes the conversation. Before you share profits, people are asking for things like, oh, we want snooker tables, and we want ice cream van every Friday, and we want all these things, right? These nice things. And then when you start to talk about sharing profits with them, they're like, what does this cost, right? And they start to think like you. Employees won't think like you unless you reward them the way you get rewarded. And I'm not saying you give all of your profits away, but maybe you can pay a lower hourly rate than some of your competitors, but more than make up for that with better incentives than them, and your team are more engaged, if that makes sense. Next one, productivity measurement. So that's a key one for our production staff, looking at throughput per person per month or whatever. And we try to incentivize on, if there's more capacity per person, then their team leader gets bonuses and so on. Cost saving idea bonuses. So for example, engineering team here, if these guys come forward with a cost saving idea, what we do is we calculate what that saved the business in 12 months, and we pay them a lump sum of 10% of that 1 year saving. And that can be a huge bonus for someone, right? But then it's also a huge incentive. And you know what? I got the other 90% anyway, and I wouldn't have had it unless this person came up with the idea. So I got 90% I wouldn't have had. I'm more than happy to give them 10% of it. Next one, customer service 5-star bonus. This transformed our customer service. So we have technical products going out into the field that are being installed by tradespeople all over the world. And they come on the phone with a technical issue, and the tech support person might say, switch the blue wire with the red wire, and that solves their problem, and they're good. But great customer service isn't just about solving the problem. It's about how you solve it. It's about rapport. It's about conflict resolution with the customer who's maybe frustrated or angry, and it's about how that's done, and leaving the customer going away feeling really happy, or feeling they got more than what they asked for. So what we do is we allow them to ask the customer at the end of the call to rate the service that they got today on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. You maybe have seen this in website reviews and so on. And if they get a 5-star review, we pay them £3 per phone call that they get a 5-star review from the customer. On top of their hourly rate, So they're incentivized to be polite and to make the customer feel good on that call. And sometimes they can do that without even fixing the problem, but the customer has a good feeling about the brand. And, we get amazing reviews coming in where customers, would scream about how great our staff are a lot of the time on the phones. Last one here, I try to, especially with salespeople, have 40% of their, or leaders and managers, 40% of your monthly income connected to business KPIs and to bonuses and stuff. So that's a huge portion of someone's income that's variable. And it means that people are more plugged in to the business. They're not just getting a wage and going home and doing the bare minimum, getting through the day. They actually care because it makes a difference to their income. Okay, step 4, company culture. So I'm going to give you a little example of what we did here on the next slide, a case study. I did this with Invest and I, with their support, and they commended this very highly at the time. So we asked our global team of employees, we asked them 2 questions in a survey. We said, question 1, can you describe the current company culture in individual words? So we gave them a form and said, write down 3 separate words, up to 3 words that you would use to describe our current company culture. Question 2, write down 3 individual words that you would use to describe the ideal company culture and where you'd want to work. So we got from that 2 things, we got where we're currently at, because what I think my company culture isn't really the company culture. If you listen to Simon Sinek or people like that, they'll say it's stories they talk about you in the supermarket. It's when someone says, what's it like to work at AES? Their answer, when you collate them all and average them, is your actual company culture, not what management think it is. And certainly it's not what the chart you have on the wall, and I'll show you that in a minute. So if we roll on to the next slide, when the forms came in, we tabulated those and we put the most popular used words at the top. So this is just an example. It's not what we actually had, but say, for example, a lot of people, 14 people said they wanted more openness. That went to the top, and communication and so on. So we ranked them in order of what people wanted. And then if we took the top 6, I think, and if we go on to the next slide, we put those into a graphic, and we still use that today. This was done in 2018 or so. And I allowed staff to decide what kind of company they wanted to work in, and that kind of represents it right there. I added one of my own. My name's above the door, so I think that's fair game. And mine was fun, the blue one, because I believe when we enjoy what we do and we have fun with it, we'll be better at it. We'll enjoy it more. Stress levels are down, energy goes up, and so on. So that was our company culture sort of graphic. And I suppose if we go on to the next slide, it doesn't just end there. We would use this this is a kind of shape of our organizational chart. We don't have the boss at the top. We actually have the boss at the bottom. And then leaders above that, and so on, right away up to customers at the top. They're the most important people. I try to tell people here, I don't pay their wages, the customer does. I just administer that a bit. Like government doesn't have money. They just take it off the taxpayer and then they spread it out where they see fit. That's kind of what I do. Maybe a little bit better than government though. So on the right-hand side here, you can see that pressure, responsibility, accountable, stress, and worry. And yes, okay, reward financially, that all that stuff flows downwards. So there's most pressure at the bottom, but support, care, praise, and recognition all has to go up. Okay, so my job as an MD is to support my senior leaders and make sure they have everything they need. If they're stressed or they've got anxious stuff going on for them, or they've got conflict between departments, it's my job to help them do their jobs as best as they can. It's in their job to support their leaders and so on. So that's a real big thing for me. Okay, let's move it on. So a few bullet points here, we'll just roll through them quick. You need to live, eat, and breathe culture. It's an everyday discipline. It's a never-ending process. And guess what? Company culture can be great in good times, and there's bonuses flying around, and the ice cream van every Sunday, and go out for big party at Christmas and stuff. but it'll be really tested whenever things get hard. That's when you see your real company culture, when backs are against the wall. So it's hugely important to start working that right now. And I've got some suggested viewing material or reading material. If you're into books or you'd rather do a bit of YouTube, take a look at some of these here. Nice little material here. This surrounded by idiots sounds a wee bit arrogant, doesn't it? That you're reading this and you think all your staff are idiots, but actually it's backwards. If you haven't read that book, what it really tells you is if you find yourself surrounded by idiots, you're the idiot. It's not actually, it's just a lack of understanding of human behavior and other people. It's a nice little short read. You'll pick it up at an airport as well, and it's not very deep. Nice little one there by Simon Sinek. If you've followed him online and stuff, Start With Why. Great companies start with why. Nice little read for sure. And then Steve Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. I find that useful because he has conversations with sports leaders, with business leaders, and lots of different folk, and he talks a lot himself in it. And you can actually relate to a lot of things they're saying, a lot of the pressures and a lot of the stuff that's coming at you. You'll find that you're not alone. It's a lonely place being an MD or CEO at the top of a company, but the more you sort of consume this material, the more you realize that there's more people in your position than you might think. So next slide is on benefits. What are the benefits of having an improvement to your company culture? Well, no doubt about it, your staff will care more if they like where they work and they know they're valued and there's open communication. They'll work harder. You probably will get more loyalty. It doesn't mean to say people won't still leave, but maybe less. More trust, which is a two-way thing. And the two maybe real important ones for most of us are at the bottom here. Customers feel it. If you have staff who are interacting with customers and representing your brand, if those staff are happy, they feel like they've got respect, customers will sense it. They'll hear the tone on the voice. They'll see the smiles. They'll see people going over and above. And if your competitors aren't doing this sort of stuff, it's a win-win. And then ultimately more bottom line, really a lot of businesses start up to make money and maybe to do other things as well, more deep, meaningful things other than just profiteering. But, bottom line is important, of course. So who doesn't want more of that? So step 5, measure. So what we have to do is think about what we're measuring and what actually what matters to the business. I have clients in business mentoring and they're measuring certain things like turnover or some ambiguous thing that just the owner has in their head that this is what they should measure, but they've never thought of asking their customers what matters to them. So what actually matters to your customers? Again, in the restaurant example, maybe customers' speed of service is important, or politeness of service, or price, or being able to kids eat for free. It would be interesting to ask those questions. We have actually pushed out a survey on our social media and given customers like a $20 Amazon gift voucher to tell us what they think of us, rate our customer service on a 1 to 5, and what could we do to improve it, and so on. Like many time I've been in a restaurant and you finish your meal and they'll say, "Everything okay for you?" And most of us just say yes. We're a polite society. Yeah, everything's okay. But maybe it took a wee while to come out. But what if they asked the question, "So you ordered the steak. How would you have improved on that steak? Can you tell us one thing that you would have done or it could be done to make that even better?" To which I might say, well, actually, it's probably a wee bit over salty, or a little bit more sauce on the side, or you could give them specific feedback. So think about that, and let's roll this on to the rest of these points here. So sales versus profits, that's one that really concerns me, where businesses measure their turnover, their sales, and you know what, they don't matter to a large extent. Profits is a key one. And I guess probably a lot of businesses get nervous about talking about profits because they think that if they share their profits with their team, that somehow will lead to a conversation for more money. Sometimes it doesn't, if it's done the right way. So I would say be careful with measuring just sales. your sales go up 10%, but your costs go up 20%. You could be celebrating that increase in sales, but actually you're starting to become insolvent. Be careful what you measure. Dials per day mistake, right? Okay, so anybody being on the receiving end of cold calls, or you have an account with some supplier and a person you normally deal with just rings you up to ask you how your day is and what's the weather like, and then they go off the call. It's clear that they've been incentivized to make 60 dials per day. And that's a problem, because they're just making 60 dials. They're not actually generating business. It's not a meaningful conversation. So, and we fell into that trap as well, measuring phone activity and talk time per day and stuff like that. And then we said, no, that's actually the wrong thing to measure. We want to measure growth in sales, or we want to measure a particular sales rep's average margin, and then incentivize him to like put his prices up a little bit or something like that. So be careful about that. And then try to link what you measure to team rewards. That's really important. And we'll talk a wee bit more about that soon. So what behavior or outcome are you trying to encourage, and can you measure it? So if you're looking to influence the behavior of your staff in some way, to be more customer friendly or to be more efficient, can you measure that, and then can you connect that to an incentive for them? Next point is discuss it with your team before setting, and ask for agreement and buy-in. Done that as well, where set performance targets for people, but never discussed it with them. They looked at it across the desk from me and said, yeah, that's okay. And then went out of the room, and truth be told, they didn't believe they could hit the targets. They thought they were too high or whatever else, so they never even tried. So I think it's much, much better to say to someone, what do you think you could do? An increase in productivity or increase in sales or whatever. And when they tell you that what they think they can do, then there's real buy-in from them. And you know what, because they said it, they're going to have to do it. The onus is on them to live up to their word. I then try and set agreed targets with the person. Again, back to the what do you want conversation out of life. Set agreed targets that both of you have sat down and said, yeah, these are achievable. And then reward accordingly. Set your, whether someone wants an extra few holidays a year if they hit certain targets, because time off is important, or it's money, or it's whatever, connect that to an actual reward system so that they're closely linked. And if it doesn't work, change it. So I'll give you a quick story. One time I had a production manager that I incentivized for increase in throughput per person by a certain percentage a year in his production team, and then keeping the quality below a certain reject rate. So quality had to be, failures had to be below a certain threshold. So I thought that was great, and he thought it was great, and off we went. But 6 months or a year later, we had to have a sit down and a conversation, because the production manager was getting more and more stressed every month, and the guy was starting to get really, really afraid. And when I sat down and discussed it with him, what happened was that quality bonus was broken from day one. What he did to try and make sure that the quality remained within target was all of his team who produced product, he checked their work to make sure there was no quality rejects at the next stage where it was being measured. So he double checked it. But the behavior that created was the team who were making the product realized their work was being checked anyway, so they weren't as careful. So actually what happened was quality went down instead of up, because I made the wrong plan. So don't be afraid if it doesn't work to say, sorry, that was an error. Let's go back to the drawing board, and make sure if you're writing a little one-page agreement on these things that you put a clause in there to say that you've a get out. So next slide here then is about company objectives and individuals. They say that if anyone in your organization, if you even are the sort of business who publicize your company objectives, and you should, what are we trying to do here? What are our objectives? Be vocal about them, put it on paper, share it with them. But if a member of your team thinks that no matter how hard they work, it's not going to make any difference to the company objective, then they're disconnected. So if we just move it on to the next slide, what we're looking for is an individual like this fourth person in here to see that their efforts directly impact the company objectives. They have an actual impact on the overall picture. Okay, so let's rattle it on. Now, before we move on to questions, I suppose just one point I would finish with the whole strategy, bringing your team in early, incentivizing them and all that sort of stuff. This all sounds like very new age thinking, but there's an Egyptian proverb or African that goes like this: three guys in the desert with pickaxes and they're mining stone or whatever. One's really unhappy, one is okay with it, and the other one is loving it. So the guy who's really unhappy, he just understands that he's in 40-degree heat, he's got blisters in his hands, and it's hard work. The guy who's okay with it understands that while he's in the same heat and has the same blisters, that he's understood that he's going to put one of his kids through university. So he understands what his life goals are and where he's headed in life. And that's why, it's good to have that chat with your team. But the third guy, he's happiest of all. Same blisters, same heat. But he understands that while he's sending his kids to university, someone told him that he's helping to build a pyramid. So that is, so there's a sense of pride and a sense of connection, a sense of purpose in his work. He's not just digging rocks out of the ground, he's actually helping to build something amazing. So this is where the strategy piece comes in, the company objectives, and making sure your team know that whatever they do is part of something bigger. There's a mission here, and this is what our mission is. So that's me wrapped up on a very quick rattle through. Happy to see if we can maybe take a question or two.
Yes, absolutely, Paul. That was great. Thank you so much. We have 2 questions in here and a couple more actually coming in as we speak. If you have any questions as we're going through sort of the Q&A, please do just pop them in the Q&A box and we'll get straight to them. First question is a business's recruitment and selection processes brought into focus to ensure that given the challenging economic climate, the best fit personnel are brought into the business?
So the question is, how to do that, how to do recruit, making sure you get the best people. Okay, yes, really great question. Fantastic one, and it comes back into the company culture thing. We tell, not even in the interview process, but in the application process, we publicly state in our application forms what our expected company culture values are, because company culture it's really how we expect to treat each other and how we expect to be treated. Openness and honesty and all that other stuff that you saw in the graphics, we put that out there in the application forms. In other words, if you don't agree with this, don't apply. You're not one of us. You're not an AES guy or gal. We don't, go find somewhere that works for you. And then in the interview stage as well, our questions are based around that. So, they often say that you hire for skills, but you fire for behaviors. So usually people end up getting fired because there wasn't the fit, or there was tensions, or there was whatever. So it's important to get that right in the interview stage and ask the right questions, try and get into their personal psyche. For more senior positions, what I try to do is, if someone's interviewed, I try to tell them that, no, that's the interview done. Do you fancy going and grabbing a coffee? You said a couple of things interesting about your hobbies. I'd like to know more about you. And kind of almost try and put the interview thing aside to try and get under the fingernails and see what's going on with the real person, and ask them about family and what's important to them, and on all these sort of deep core belief questions, I would say. So if you look up core beliefs and a little bit about that and try and fit that into your team.
Perfect. Thank you. And do you ask any sort of questions in an interview specifically? How would you say, do you have any questions that you'd recommend that are bringing out the skills as well as the personality? I know it's quite easy to hire someone that you gel with that will fit well with the team. Is there any sort of questions that you'll go to for making sure you're hiring the best fit into the actual company as well as the team?
Yeah. So skills are pretty easy because their skills are proven with their previous employment, unless you're working with a graduate, and then their qualifications prove skills. Skills are easy, and skills really only make up 20% of what matters to a forward-thinking business owner. Now, 80% is their soft skills, their EQ, emotional intelligence versus IQ, and so on. So getting into EQ questions, here's a few quick examples. Tell me about your group of friends. So why does that question work for me? If I'm needing a salesperson who's customer facing, I'm looking for an extrovert, someone who's got probably lots of friends, and I've got my university buddies still, and I've got my best friend from primary school, but I've also got like my hockey friends, and my college mates, and still, you'd be looking at someone who's got more friends than perhaps you can count, and that would fit that role very well. If, however, I'm looking for an accountant who's a deep delving, binary thinking, almost autistic spectrum, logical person, I would expect a very different answer and want a very different answer, because someone who's all these people around them, friends, would be a bit of a bouncy ball and very hard to keep focused. And I would expect that answer for that type of role to be, I just have my best friend from primary school and just kind of me and her, and we just hang out and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you so much. Next question is, given the current recession and how it is likely to develop going forward, how will this alter business strategies from a marketing perspective?
Depends on the business very much. That's a big question, and there's a big answer to that. It would absolutely depend on the business, but I guess just going back to points earlier, what 9 out of 10 businesses do doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you need to do as well. Sometimes there is merit in going for a clean sheet or going for an empty space where no one else is. For example, I did some pro bono work with businesses and mentoring when the COVID struck. And I had a restaurant business who, we had the conversation, which was, what can you not do? So the answer there was, well, right now I can't open my restaurant, but what can you do? Well, I can cook really, really good international food or Italian food, whatever it was. Okay, and let's look at a, home delivery, high end, kind of like an M&S idea, 2 meals and a bottle of wine and a sort of package it all type of thing delivered to your door. And that restaurant broke their all-time Saturday night turnover record while the restaurant was closed, because he was happy to think differently and think outside the box. There's plenty of Chinese deliveries and Domino's and other things. He didn't need to be the cheapest in town, just needed to be something a little bit different.
Brilliant, thank you. And just the next one just like leads on from that recession question. If people are particularly nervous or there's any anxiety around talking to their staff about the impending recession, do you have any advice on that and how to go about it? Is there anything you've done in your experience?
Yeah. So I suppose we're all maybe inclined to overprotect our staff or try and put a brave face on it, but people are intelligent and they'll see through that. So I think I've sat down and did what we call a town hall with all the folk here, and we videoed it and sent it out. And I basically asked them for Q&As, who's nervous and who's worried. And I said, honestly, I'm a little worried. I'm probably 10% concerned, probably 20% excited about the challenges and so on. So I didn't completely just say, no, it's fine. It'll be okay. We'll be okay. Don't worry about it, because there's no substance behind that. So I think it's better to say, yes, this is a concerning situation. However, I want to sit down with you guys, put our heads together. Let's discuss what we can do. How can we together as a team make sure that we're all safe, that your jobs are safe, that the business is safe? What more can we do? If you guys got ideas, anyone, a dab hand on social media, you could maybe help out, or, whatever. And it's kind of like a little bit of an all hand, a battle cry, all hands to the pump. And honestly, I think whenever that's done well, actually motivation can skyrocket when things get tough. I have seen it now there are stories out there of businesses. There's a manufacturing company somewhere in the US that the owner came onto the shop floor in a recession in the 80s and said they were going to have to lose 10% of our team or something to that effect, or 20%. But the team got together and they went back to the owner and said, we're all going to work a 4-day week to keep everyone. And they did that, and what actually happened was their productivity went up, and they actually ended up growing in the recession because everyone was so plugged in. They felt safe, they felt cared for, and loyalty skyrocketed. And they said, we're going to do everything for this guy, and it was a tearful, emotional plea by him that these things are tough on people, like laying people off or letting people go. It's the hardest thing in my mind that you have to do in a business, and it has to be done sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so did that company, instead of cutting the staff, they just cut down the staff time, and so the salaries dropped there as well a little bit?
They cut from a 5-day to a 4-day week, but that had such an impact on customer service, on quality of the product, on efficiencies and things that they ended up winning market share of their rivals, being a better priced product or whatever else it was. And it was a huge. I'd love to remember the name of the company so everyone could go off and have a look at it, but it escapes me now. It's a story I heard a while ago.
That was brilliant. Just one final question in. It's just about sort of from your experience as well. How did you handle sort of things through the pandemic with your employees and just general business?
Yeah, good one as well. So I can give you a particular story. It hit our sales people more than anything. These, like I've got 4 or 5 in England and US and different countries, and these people would be over a territory, spend a lot of their time on the road visiting customers, and their phone is going ding, ding, ding all day long with orders coming in. And every order to a salesperson is like commission. It's like a drug, they're getting a hit. And even if it's a customer complaint, it's all still adrenaline, and like, I need to get this sorted. And then all that stopped. Mm-hmm. It all just died. And these guys became, I think, kind of depressed. So I remember having a Zoom call with them, and they were on furlough. So they weren't allowed to work, right? But they really, really struggled with that. And I said to them, well, you're not allowed to work, but you guys tell me that you're business people, that you are over this region and you're the guy or you're the girl. So go develop relationships with your former customers, find out how they're doing, ask them, are they okay? How's the kids coping with homeschooling? Get the dates of the birthdays for the children, so put it into the CRM system so that this time next year you'll get a reminder. You can text them to say, hope you're treating the princess tomorrow. He'll be like, how did you remember? And I sort of said to them, like, you need to pick yourselves up. Stop feeling sorry for yourselves. You can't ask for orders. You can't work, but you can build friendships and relationships and get to know these people. And they went off the call and said to their managers that I was a bit of an arse. They said, that was a bit rough. He didn't pull his punches, and we got a bit of a talking to. But after about another 3 or 4 weeks, they came back to say, yeah, he was right. We're noticing a huge change in relationship here with customers. And we came out of it then pretty sharp and pretty quick because of that. Just the attitude of what can we do, not what can't we do.
Amazing, thank you. That's all of our questions. I just have one last one. You've given us our 5-step battle plan. It's brilliant. What would be your one takeaway from today's session for all of the businesses listening from Middlestar?
One of those, I think, to me, probably the biggest impact on business I've seen is culture within it. The culture that you have in there, customers feel it, they sense it. I think, to me, and that's nearly one of the hardest ones. Like, you can sit down and in a half a day work out your strategy going forward, but culture is every single day. It's calling people out whenever you see an email from one employee to another. It's a little bit off tone, and you say, no, that's not what we agreed to. We agreed to work side by side, brothers and sisters in the trenches. Don't shoot the person beside you in the trench because you've one less person to fight the real enemy who's over there, right? So to me, that's the biggie, and that's a never-ending job. You're always going to be working on that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of our webinar. Paul, thank you so much. It was so thought-provoking, and I'm sure everyone's taking away loads of tips and information. To everyone listening, we'll be sending all of you the slides from today's webinar shortly after the webinar closes for you to refer back to, and just a reminder that the webinar has been recorded, so it will be uploaded to the council's website. We'll also be sending around a short feedback form, which would be brilliant if you're happy to fill it out, just so we can hear your feedback on today's session to help council design next year's programme of events. Don't forget, by attending today, you've also been entered into a prize draw, so you could be winning an iPad or a smartphone. If you are a winner, one of the council officers will be in contact with you next week. Again, on behalf of Middlestar District Council, thank you so much for your attendance today and your interaction. We hope we're sending you away with loads of information to use in your daily business. And thank you so much again to you, Paul.
Thank you. Pleasure.